Hello. So, the book that I read that I'm doing the review on is called Healing of America, A Global Quest for Better, Cheaper, and Fairer Healthcare. It was written by T.R. Reid, and I chose it because I wanted to learn a little bit more about healthcare and the United States and the comparison of healthcare between the United States and other countries. And I wanted to see what kind of complex systems they had. I kind of expected to read more about countries in general, and it usually ended up comparing the United States and these countries within each chapter. And he put out five countries specifically, and they were all industrialized democracies, as what he calls them. Um, and he compares them in more of a way to give his point a little bit more support about you know the healthcare in the United States. Um, I know it was going to look at the American healthcare and the American healthcare system as well as comparing to other countries' healthcare systems to support his point, but it sorry it put a bit more emphasis on the global look, hence the title. But adding in that was really well done on his part because it I think it's a strong point to make, and it's information that can be used to make that strong point. So I think the most important thing I took from this was that he basically says that no system is perfect, and each system of healthcare has its differences and its has its strengths, weaknesses, flaws, perfections. It's kind of a balance, compare and contrast, just like this whole book. And and but these systems do whatever they can to provide for their citizens, and he touches up on that a lot. And but however, this book brings into play many compare and contrast moments, and it's a lot of that throughout the whole book. And I got the feeling from reading that any of these different healthcare systems are, and he states it too, that are better to use than the United States healthcare system. And I mean, when you read about this and you hear that, it's kind of, you take a second look at it. Um, but a lot of his stuff is unbiased, and he's not making an argument, a radical argument for something. He's explaining and he's comparing, and he's making out the differences of what's going on with each healthcare system. Um, he he states that there is going to be always going to be pluses and minuses in the systems, and he talks about this quite a bit throughout his book. Sorry, I'm catching something or something. Um, the main theme of this book is basically making the argument that healthcare is a basic human right, and that each country has their own systems, but any country outside of the U.S. has a better system than the United States healthcare system, and that's what he points at quite a bit in his paper, and his information points the same way. Um, and he makes great points to cover his topic, and he adds in a lot of information, statistics, and he goes from each chapter. It'll be country, 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 and comparing them with the U.S. And then he goes into his points later on in the later chapters of the book, and he emphasizes a lot, and he uses a lot of statistics within this second part of the book. Um, but for he adds in his own experiences sometimes too, and you'll get this. He'll add his experiences with the American healthcare system that I'm sure all of us can relate to, and that I've related to when I was reading the book. It really hooked me in when he added those in. But the sources talk for themselves. Um, he explains that the U.S. healthcare system is a out of pocket system, meaning that there are a lot of Americans that go uninsured because it costs so much for health insurance here, that they pay out of pocket, and sometimes they can't, so they go without health care. And that's something that I'm currently dealing with. So it's it's kind of a relatable topic to follow with this book. And he creates that argument that the U.S. can afford better health care, but that it doesn't pursue it. And I thought that was pretty interesting when he talked about that. Because it's so, and I can see that, from prior research too. I mean, you could check out models of the budget for the United States government from previous years, and you can notice that a lot of it is spent on the military-industrial complex. And I wrote a paper on this a while back with another class, but it's very apparent that defense is a big spender here, and not a lot goes into healthcare. Quite a bit does, but not a lot goes into it. So it's hard to actually pay for that. And he explains that, I think, is a main point that Reed makes is that other industrialized democracies have used methods to provide health care for citizens for far less than what is spent for healthcare in the United States. He has 3 focal points throughout his whole book, and that's the point of cost, how much it actually costs, the quality of that healthcare, and the choices made within that healthcare system. And then he uses 4 basic models for the healthcare system, healthcare delivery and insurance. Apologies. There's the Beveridge model that he uses, the Bismarck model, National Health Insurance model, and the out-of-pocket model. And essentially, he uses these models to compare the countries to the United States, but he also says that these 4 models can be applied directly to the United States themselves. Each of his with each of his chapters being on the different countries, he leans into that point. But at the end of his book, he goes into more detail about these models, and everything that he wants to talk about, he definitely goes into. What I thought was really interesting was the chapter 13. I know a lot of people that have premonitions about what foreign healthcare systems are and what they're like, and you could say that sometimes these are cruel systems, or they're way too expensive, or nobody can afford it because they're living in terrible conditions, just usual stuff. He lists 5 specific ones that I can't really name off the top of my head. But in chapter 13 of his book, Reed talks about the myths of foreign healthcare. So he wants to give the reader a look into what they have thought about before, and he relates it to exactly what he wants to talk about. So he also, by doing that, though, he also provides unbiased research. He's not just saying, oh, this is what happens, this is what I think. He is providing a unbiased approach to what he's trying to give the reader, and the information that he uses on that on the point that he's trying to make is more statistical, and it's factual. So he tries not to go into more personal details. He believes that the healthcare system can be improved in the United States if we take the ideas and policies of other countries and adapt them to our own. And he likes to talk about this quite a bit in the end of the book, and I think that caught my eye quite a bit. It can be experienced by all of us, and the way that Reed writes, it's very relatable. I mean, like I said before, you can get into it, you can have a nice discussion about it, and it's something that you read and you get hooked and you keep going, and you find that a lot of his information makes sense. And 2 questions that I honestly got really interested in was, he asked the questions: what are our basic ethical values, and do we believe that every American has a right to health care when she needs it? So he asked those questions, and it's pretty interesting. So what I think about, I really enjoyed the book, and I agreed with a lot of things that he wrote. It created a very relatable train of thought, like I was saying earlier, and and I'm kind of dealing with the same situation right now. But his paper was very well laid out, and he had a lot of good sources for his argument. But it was also it also provided a very intricate way of creating a very nice, positive, constructive discussion. And I think that's what this book touches up on a lot, is that ability to actually discuss what we're reading, and try to figure it out. And, he provides some good thought processes about this, and you can use it quite a bit. I think the things that I found most important of this book is that the use of the foreign healthcare systems. I think including that into trying to talk about the United States healthcare system was a very, very good idea, and honestly, it provides a lot more. He provided a lot more information than I expected, and honestly, with that information, it's kind of easy to deduct what's wrong, and he puts out there the positive and negative effects of each system, and he and honestly, the fact that he's not focusing on just negative or just positive brings me to the conclusion that he's actually making an unbiased attempt at figuring out this problem. And I think this book definitely connected with me a lot more, and it was a very interesting read, and I really enjoyed it. I really highly recommend it, because the information's great, the presentation is perfect, organization, it's really great, and the points made that he has in there, they get you thinking. And I think that's what makes this book very influential and very effective. This could be used as something that can help create a pathway to thought that can help solve problems. So I think it'll be very influential if there's any talk of reforms in the healthcare system. It opens up the reader's mind to the information presented, and the book moved me to think a little more on the subject, and honestly opened up my mind a little bit more, and I enjoyed that fact. It was a nice read. So in conclusion, to wrap up this video, the book's thesis basically is him making the point that healthcare is a basic human right, and that every system is flawed, but many Americans can afford it in the United States. So why are other countries giving their citizens better healthcare than the United States? Because the United States can afford it a lot more than the other countries. So he brings up that point quite a bit. And it's provided universally around the world in different industrialized democracies like the ones that he lists in the book. And the system the U.S. chooses to provide its healthcare, most people go uninsured because of it. He throws out the 4 models, and he creates the 3 focal points that is important to his research in his book. Reed goes, he gives the reader a substantial amount of information and material to go on to make his point, and he does a pretty good job at it. He compares other countries to the United States to give the reader that idea that the healthcare system in the U.S. needs to be improved. He's basically thrown that out there using unbiased approaches in his research and information. I think Reed hit the issue spot on, but I do wish that he could have added in more opinions from doctors around the world, and in the United States. It honestly would have given a little bit more room for developments or ideas, and help the reader gain some thoughts on the subject. Honestly, this is the only improvement that I have. I think the book was really well written. He did a really good job, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. Definitely highly recommend it. and honestly, the book can definitely relate to the evolution of the healthcare system for the people in the United States, and the positive uphill advancements that it has had. Um, it does certainly support a lot of what Reed writes about, and the text does that too, and other additional readings that I've seen in the course. So, but that's about it that I have for this. So, thank you.